Okay. Hey, my name is Arto Martonen. I'm the founder of Motley, digital studio and startup incubator of 30 people. And with me, I have Paul Murphy. Can you introduce yourself and tell a bit about your other company than Two Dots, the BetaWorks?
Sure. So my name is Paul Murphy. I have kind of a split role. I'm a partner at BetaWorks, and I'll explain what BetaWorks does in a second. And I also run our game studio called Dots, which is this brand. We have two games, Dots and Two Dots, and that came out of BetaWorks. So if I can maybe just take a second to explain what BetaWorks is, because it's very different.
Yes, please.
BetaWorks does two things. They invest and they build. And so on the investing side, they were the first investors in Tumblr, Kickstarter, about 85 other companies. And on the building side, they've built companies that include Bitly, the URL shortener, TweetDeck, Surmise, both companies were sold to Twitter. Dots came out of BetaWorks. And so it's an interesting place. It's effectively a community of builders. And that community is formed from investments or from the companies that we actually build.
What about where you get the ideas? Do you innovate them yourselves, or do you invest into entrepreneurs that come with you with the ideas? So where to start?
So most of the ideas, I think what's different from BetaWorks as a startup studio versus, let's say, a traditional incubator, all the ideas actually come from within BetaWorks. And so they're either people that are working on different projects, or there's an idea that someone has and they get together on the weekend and they put together a project. Dots actually was built, the first game was built by my co-founder who was working on a different company at BetaWorks at the time. Took a trip to Japan, got inspired, created a game. And so a lot of companies just sort of start organically like that.
So you got many ideas, but how you validate that what has really good potential, what startup you should start making on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things that are very difficult. I would say the hardest parts of building companies. Ideas are plenty. You could probably talk to people here. There's a billion ideas. The concept of signing an NDA for an idea, I think, is silly. The hard part is trying to understand if there's something there. Because at some point, you have to decide if you want to invest the time as the most precious resource in building out the company. And then there's kind of the next stage, which is, do you go big? Or do you just sort of accept it's a novelty? So what we do is data is very core to everything that we build. And so we think of it as almost like layers of an onion. At the core, we test things internally with our team and our friends and family. And it's surprising how informative that process can be. I think the notion of building a product that no one in your current team or your extended family uses every day is a bad one. So if that group doesn't work, you sort of pass it on. But then we sort of test everything else along the way.
What about the competencies that you have in-house? I really feel like many of your products are such a design candy. So at least you have great designers in-house. But what about the coding, all the production? So how you get into the production phase?
Yeah, so the company is sort of built on, the company is comprised primarily of engineers. So engineers, data scientists, and designers. I think the reason that a lot of our products tend to feel more thoughtfully designed is because I think a little bit of New York. New York is a very creative city. A lot of the technical talent in New York came out of the agency and advertising world, and so they're always thinking visually. But we do sort of think data and technical capabilities are at our core, and then we like to have a polished design on things if possible.
What about then after the production phase? That how you launch things? I really felt like after your first presentation that you have a strong marketing focus also. That you really get the potential customers in and start to develop product with them. Or what kind of process you have in launching?
So, I mean, one of the interesting things about BetaWorks, I think there's a lot of sources of value that a startup studio like BetaWorks can provide you. The first is your access to talent. So you can form teams. We've created companies and formed teams of 10 in a matter of days. That's really hard to do if you don't have all those people in a room. The second thing, which is practical, is they have capital. They've been very successful. They've sold a handful of companies. And so when you need access to capital for marketing or growing your team, it's a phone call or a conversation. You're not pitching investors endlessly. The third is probably the most useful, which is launch support. So when you're going to get a product into market, you obviously want it to work, but more important than that is you want to know very quickly if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And so we test everything. We embed sort of a lot of data science behind our products, but then we have company assets, other BetaWorks company assets like Dig. Dig is a company that we acquired and rebuilt over the past 2 years, and it's a very sort of large property. And so we can actually get audience through Dig, put 10 or 20,000 people into a product in a day and determine whether or not it looks like it's viable. And if it is, we have to obviously get the traffic elsewhere to grow the product. But it's nice to get that initial validation.
What about you? You have invested and incubated about 100 companies. So tell a bit about your biggest success cases or the failures or lessons learned.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in terms of the success cases, Bitly is a company that I sort of admire. They shorten, I think it's something like 1/3 of the internet's short links still go through Bitly. And so there's just a tremendous amount of data. They know everything that's happening on the internet before it makes it into any news site. It goes through Bitly. So I think that's a company that was built by a few engineers. They were creating a tool for a different project, and they realized, wait, there's something to this, and it just took off. It's well-funded, it's generating revenue, it's got great leadership. So I think a lot of Bitly. I think on the failure side, and obviously I'm biased, I think Dots is the most amazing company ever formed out of BetaWorks, but I'm definitely biased there. On the failure side, I think, the companies that I would look at and say we've failed are the ones that we've kept running for too long. And like I said before, our most precious resource is our time. And there's nothing worse than spending time on a company that where all signs indicate that it's just not going to work. It's hard because you get emotionally attached to these products and to these companies, but at some point you have to sort of cut it off and move on. So there's been only a few cases where I think we've probably stuck it out too long, but those are the only ones I could really point to and say we've kind of failed on.
Yeah, but you have also killed many companies. If you have 100 success cases.
Oh yeah, many companies. I didn't mention any of the ones that have died, but yeah, there's lots of companies that have died that we've either funded or we've built. I think that, there's a few cases where, all the hard lessons you learn when you're building a startup usually come from the companies that fail. The ones that succeed, you feel like you're on top, but it's the failures where I think where you learn your best lessons. So a lot of times we really invest in the people that have been at a failed startup because we're more confident they're going to figure something out in the next round. So we sort of try to praise failure as much as we can.
What about you are in e-commerce industry, you work in media, you are in gaming, you are in multiple industries, so do you feel that you can build up a new company into every industry, or do you have some kind of focus, or where you focus in the future?
Yeah, so for BetaWorks, the thesis is pretty broad, but John Borthwick, who started the company 6.5 years ago, felt like real-time, social, and data were going to fundamentally change the media landscape. And that, I think we've already seen that happen. But everything that we invest, build, or buy usually has real-time data, social, and forgot the third now, I'm on stage fright. But I think there's, so that's sort of like that focus exists with most of the companies. Media is the overall umbrella, though, for all of our companies.
Yeah. What about the future? Where are you focusing next? What's cooking inside BetaWorks?
There's a few things. There's a piece of tech that we're building, which is helping us understand how to market to people effectively through social, which is a company we're very excited about. And then, honestly, there's a few companies that have just in the last year exploded in growth. One of them presented here, which is Bloglovin, blog reading platform, primarily women's fashion and lifestyle. There's a company called Giphy. For those of you that like GIFs, animated GIFs, it's literally the only way our teams communicate are through these GIFs in Slack.
At least in our Slack, it's really popular.
Well, if you use Slack or HipChat, there's a plugin that you can get which turns on Giphy. It'll destroy your productivity, but it'll make things very fun. That's one of my favorite companies right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're out of time. We have 5 minutes for questions. So, is there any questions for audience that Paul or I could answer?
Someone's stretching or they have a question? I don't know which one. I think there was...
Was there one? Or?
Yeah, there's one over here. Yeah. We thought... No question after all? There's got to be at least one. We can't have no questions, because that makes us look really bad.
Yeah, hey, then tell us a bit more. Now, you had a presentation at the... Okay, yeah.
We're good.
That's it.
We'll wrap up.
Yeah,
Thanks so
okay.
much, everyone.
Hey, thanks, Tom.